Welcome into Duval Daily, presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan DeLugo. Thank you so much for tuning in here on Thursday, December 26th. Hopefully everybody had a fantastic Christmas for all those who celebrate. And if you celebrate something else, I hope that's going well for you too. So, again, really appreciate you being here. We had a wonderful holiday here in our household. Little boy had a good time opening up presents for the first time. Last year he was like 5 months old, 6 months old. So didn't really know what was going on, but this year he was fired up about it, had a really good time, and very thankful for the family and thankful for everybody out there that tunes in and supports our channel. And I'm excited to talk about this topic we have on hand here today. The Jaguars, they still got a couple games left, right? Still play the Titans, the dreaded Tennessee Titans. Jaguars, greatest nemesis, I would say, certainly. And then the Colts as well, who are a division rival. Colts trying to fight for a playoff spot, it looks like, potentially. So the Jaguars could play spoiler, and then the Jaguars and Titans matchup is going to be more about draft positioning than anything else. I think that's easy to say, clear to say. Don't know why anyone would have any disagreement with that at this point. I know some people have been resistant, hesitant to start talking about the draft and saying, hey, they just need a fight to win games. Look, it's over. It's so over, right? So we don't know what's going to happen with coaching staff, front office. I think it feels very easy to come to the conclusion that changes will be made. Will it be a clean sweep? We haven't seen that really under Shad Khan. So if there is, that would be a bit of a change in his MO, change in the way he operates, but we'll see. But there are some things the Jaguars need to do this offseason, regardless of who is making decisions. And just some philosophy, roster building, draft philosophical type of things that I think the Jaguars need to adopt again, no matter who's making decisions. And the number one thing here is the Jaguars, they must address their needs in free agency. They have to. Like, I'm so sick of hearing, and, if you're one of those people out there that talks about it, sorry, but I'm sick of hearing the Jaguars have to do X in the first round because X is their biggest need. Tired of hearing that. Tired of hearing they can't do this in the second round because of this need, right? The draft is not the place where you're trying to fill all your needs. That is free agency. Free agency is where the Jacksonville Jaguars should be looking to fill their needs, to make sure that they don't have any glaring holes in their roster, right? That's how it works. Like, that's what you do. As a smart franchise, as a good franchise, that's what you should do, with few exceptions. And look, the Jaguars are going to have a boatload of salary cap space to play with here. They have a lot of maneuverability with some of their contracts at the top, and you look at their 2025 cap table over at overthecap.com, they have currently projected $46 million in salary cap space, right? That's enough to go sign some big names right there. But you've also got the Christian Kirk contract looming, which you could save almost $11 million by moving on. Evan Ingram, you could save over $6 million. Like, there's some maneuverability here to where the Jaguars, and you can also extend guys like Trayvon Walker, reduce his cap number, all sorts of different things. But needs need to be addressed in free agency, and the Jaguars have the means to do so. They have the owner willing to spend on needs. And when I say need to be addressed in free, like what they did last year in free agency, addressing a need at cornerback with Ronald Darby, that's not really addressing a need, in my opinion. It's not. That was not a big enough swing, and they had the maneuverability, the money, the means to address that in a more significant way than they did. So that's not what I'm talking. I'm talking about going and getting a proven football player that can play at a high level. And maybe Darby can play at a higher level than we saw this year. I think a lot of players on the Jaguars defense did not play up to their standard this year, including Darby. But look, the one exception I'm going to kind of lay out here when it comes to addressing needs in free agency and not using the draft to address needs. If you address all but one need in free agency, knowing that there are multiple prospects, players in your top tier that will be available at the position where you are drafting, that I can understand. So this is really kind of a first round topic, right? Like whoever's running the Jaguars, we don't know who that's going to be. If they say, for example, cornerback, which is still a need, in my opinion, strong need, probably the biggest need on the team. If they say we know that we can get Travis Hunter or Will Johnson at our pick, and we both have them both in our top tier of players, of prospects, and we're going to draft one of them when they get to us, I can understand that, right? Or if somehow they both go off the board and we aren't able to land them there, there will be X number of players at that position available in the second round that we project as like winning starters. That would be my one exception, to where like if you go into the draft with one need and you're not going to overpay for it, you're going to be you're going to respect BPA, you're going to respect your board. You're not just going to say, oh crap, we really need a corner and this is the last guy that might be decent, let's go. No, that's not how you build your roster, right? But if you have a clear and concise plan at a position of need that will allow you to follow your board as well, I get it, right? But I wouldn't be going into the draft with multiple needs for the current roster. I wouldn't. And there are different ways to build your team based at the different stages that your football team is at from a roster construction standpoint. You don't have to go out and address every need in free agency every year. If you're a team in year one of a roster rebuild, that's all right. You don't have to address every need in a major way. If you're in year two, but if you're a team that's expecting to compete at the highest level, which the Jaguars should be in 2025, you need to address almost all, maybe we have one need going into the draft. And as long as you're able to stick to your board and stay reasonable, then that's fine. But again, fill your needs in free agency. You just got to do it. Like, you've got to address the interior of the offensive line in free agency. I think you've got to address cornerback in free agency. I think you've got to address receiver in free agency. Probably tight end as well. Brenton Strange is, potentially the only one under contract. We'll see what happens with Evan Ingram. I think that they should have Evan Ingram, Brenton Strange, and I wouldn't even have a problem with them bringing Luke Farrell back on a cheap deal and just building it out that way. But again, you've got to make sure you get that squared away. This is a good tight end draft, by the way. I think you have to address at least one safety spot in free agency, right? So there's some moves that need to be made for the Jaguars here. There absolutely are. And I think receiver is a big one. But again, wide receiver, interior offensive line, edge depth, safety, corner. That's 5 spots I think if the Jaguars are able to address in a significant way in free agency, they'll be going into this draft sitting in a really good spot to not have major needs for the 2025 season and just build this thing out for the future with the best players available on their board. Now, there are a couple of caveats to BPA for me. For the Jaguars specifically, if an offensive tackle is the top player on their board and it's early in the draft, and you view this player as someone who probably can't play guard or center, you have 2 good tackles locked in right now for at least the next 2 years. If you want to move on from Walker Little following 2026, you can, but you have some tackles locked in here. If you're talking about taking a tackle that's a tackle only, like in the first or second round, that's probably not going to be the best use of resources because their only path to finding the field is injury in the first couple years of their career. So that's one caveat to BPA. As long as there's someone else that you view similarly from a numerical grade standpoint, from a tier standpoint, probably skip on tackle in that situation, right? And I just mentioned tiers. Let's say you have a need at cornerback like the Jaguars do. You know you're going to address it in the draft, as we talked about, if that is their plan. Who knows how they're going to address it? Because they could certainly just say, hey, We're going to go get DJ Reed or Charvarius Ward, and we're going to feel good about our cornerback room, or Paulson Adib, whoever it may be. But again, tier-based BPA. Even if your numerical grade on player X that is not a need player and player Y who is a need player, even if player X has a slightly higher grade, as long as they're in the same tier, as long as you view these players similarly, I think that that's fine. It's when you start jumping down multiple tier levels where it's like player X we project as a above average starter. He's not at a position of need, but player Y we project as maybe a starter, maybe a key backup. You probably need to go with player X anyways, even if they're not at a position of need, because player Y has a much bigger chance of busting. And you've got to trust your own intuition and your own process on this on the draft, even though we know it has been a crapshoot over the length of time. The draft is a bit of a crapshoot, but I think first 3 rounds, if you're not batting 66, 2/3. If you're not hitting on 2 out of 3 picks in the top 3 rounds, you probably need to figure something else out to do, because there's just too many good players available on the first 2 days of the draft to not be drafting successfully in that area of the draft. I strongly believe that. So, again, please stop thinking about the draft as this place where you address your needs. Free agency is where you address your needs. Stop telling me in the comment section on Twitter you can't take X player because you have X need. Instead, think about how this football team, your Jacksonville Jaguars, can address the short-term need in free agency where they still have a ton of spending money. Like, that's the process you should be trying to follow. And there's one more thing I want to point out. And I've talked about it a little bit, but I wanted to point it out again. Again, goes into kind of draft philosophy and team building. You do want to try to address as many needs as you possibly can throughout the offseason, right? Go into the season without glaring weaknesses. Absolutely. It's part of team building. But I think just as important, maybe in some situations more importantly, is creating a superpower on your team, like an overwhelming aspect of your team. I think can be just as, if not more valuable than making sure you have addressed every need in a major way. And I look at the Jaguars over the course of Trent Baalke's tenure, and I think that he's tried to do just enough at every spot, outside of maybe linebacker, off-ball linebacker, to say we're good here. But has he ever really gone all in on a position besides off-ball linebacker, which he failed to make a superpower of the football team despite the unbelievable amount of resources? Has he ever really said, this is going to be our identity, this is going to be our calling card, this is going to be our superpower? No, he never has done that. An example of how the Jaguars could try to do this year, there's a couple different areas, I think. If you went and you drafted another elite receiver prospect to pair with Brian Thomas Jr. at the top of the draft, that could be one of those things where it's like, wow, good luck stopping our passing game. Because I think they should keep Evan Ingram. We have Evan Ingram, we have Brian Thomas Jr., and now we have Tedero McMillan, who's a monster, or Luther Burden, who's an absolute freak show, right? These types of pairings at certain positions or certain areas of the roster can really change the calculus of a football game because it makes it really difficult for the opponent to deal with you. I also think going and getting a corner to pair with Tyson Campbell and Jarian Jones could potentially represent that type of really going in on a certain area of your team and saying, look, we've got these corners. We've also addressed safety. You're not going to be able to throw the ball easily on us down the field. You're just not going to be able to do it. Or drafting an Abdul Carter. Saying, hey, we're going to have, if not the best pass rush, one of the top 5 pass rushes in the league. With Abdul Carter, Josh Hines-Allen, and Trayvon Walker. And, budding Mason Smith, Eric Armstead hopefully kicking inside. Right? And again, I say drafting Abdul Carter. That's after adding another depth edge player in free agency. Somebody who can hopefully be a DPR type, a change-up type. So, yeah, Um, Creating areas of your roster that are absolutely dominant can help carry your football team, can help pick up the slack of other areas of your roster. And I think the Jaguars have the ability to address all their needs and create an identity, one way or the other. Again, whether that's getting another elite receiver prospect, um, whether that's getting Abdul Carter, whether that's getting a corner, or whether it's saying we're going to draft Ashton Jeanty, go get some big uglies on the interior of the offensive line, and we're going to bash your face in every game. And when you get sick of that, Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas Jr., you're not going to be able to stop them. I like that, right? So there's some different things the Jaguars can do to not only address needs, but also to create this area of their roster that is dominant, which I just don't think that they've tried to do, quite frankly, in the Trent Baalke, Doug Peterson era of building out this football team. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. You can also check out genjag.com/shop, pick up some new Duval gear, become a channel member. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Y'all have a good one.